pass the regular test. When I came back in March, my test results were so abnormal that I thought my equipment was broken. I now know why my results were the way they were. Since the Gulf has been closed to public, I got the rest of this water quality data from globe.gov, an international program that allows researchers to log in environmental data. As we see here, the ones in January and March are mine, and then the rest are from Globe. We see the regular dissolved oxygen in seawater ranges from about 8 to 11 parts per million. So in January, it was 8.5 parts per million, so right around where it should be. But you'll see that the dissolved oxygen decreased significantly, most likely due to the high amounts of sediment that were in the water when the spillway was open. You can see it goes all the way down to 5.2 parts per million, which is half of where it should be. You see that the average pH of the ocean tends to range about 8.1. It was 8.5 in January. Since the spillway was open, it has become more acidic. This can also be attributed to runoff and sediment. We see that the turbidity, which is the amount of particles in the water, normally is 10 units. It got all the way up to 48 Jackson turbidity units, which is a lot of sediment in the water. Salinity, we see that it started on average as 21 practical salinity units. There wasn't any data for March and August, but the one I got in March brought it all the way down to 4 units, which is almost freshwater, and this is in the ocean. Between March and June of this year, blue crab harvests declined approximately 25% of their annual average. Wild shrimp harvests declined approximately 40%, and oysters have been reported to be down 80 to 100%, as reported by Mississippi State. As I mentioned previously, the Gulf of Mexico, Mississippi's dissolved oxygen and pH has gone down significantly. Not only does the water contain far less oxygen than normal, but the water is more acidic. Shellfish have an exoskeleton made of calcium carbonate, which is easily dissolved in acidic solvents. The reported near extinction of oysters in the Gulf is a terrifying concept. The loss of just one species in an ecosystem can cause that ecosystem to collapse and become irreparable. The consequences cannot even be imagined. On top of all the intricate environmental connections, one major benefit of oysters is clean water. Oysters are able to process the edible components in the water and spit out the rest as sand that filters to the bottom. Especially as sediment-filled the Gulf is right now, the number one thing we need is oysters. Besides their environmental effect, there is also an economical effect. The Mississippi oyster industry is currently going through a severe economic downturn due to the massive destruction of the coral reefs. The damage to the reefs has caused a near complete shutdown of oyster harvesting, distribution, and sales. Mississippi State has reported when the spillway was opened in 2011, the commercial oyster profit had a net loss of $46 million. The long-term overall economic loss was $58 million, and 145 to 324 jobs were lost every year. There was a decline in labor income that was about $21 million, and these effects lasted from 2011 to about 2014. Now with this in mind, it's important to note that the 2011 incident, the spillway was only open for 8 days, and as I mentioned previously, the spillway this year was open for 150 days. While the 2011 incident did have more bays open at 330, it is important to notice that there was a higher amount of floodwater that was entered into the Gulf of Mississippi due to those bays being open longer this year. So I wanted to interview some of the business owners to see how their companies were impacted by the spillways. I reached out to 2 seafood canneries and to 2 seafood wholesale markets. After a long cat and mouse game, both seafood canneries and one of the wholesale markets declined to talk to me. because they claimed that nothing of interest had happened at their stores. Desport Seafood was the only company that agreed to talk, and I believe this is because the market was a very small family-owned business. The manager of the store, Frank Mena, was a very friendly and polite man. He reported that since his business runs in the family, he did not have to let anybody go. However, many of the commercial fishermen and businesses that he partners with suffered huge job cuts. His business profit dropped 36% in July and 42% in August. For the entire month of June and July, there were no shrimp being harvested. Until 2 weeks ago, there were no oysters. He mentioned that the only reason there are oysters now is because they have begun importing them from other states. Oysters used to cost him $50 a gallon, but now he has to pay $68 a gallon. Restaurants have only just now started to open back up for business, but his profit is still down 30%. As I finished up the interview with Mr. Mena, he added one last comment. He said, "It might be years before they find oysters in the Mississippi Gulf again, and even then, the reefs and the sea life will never recover." Thank you.